Hello and welcome to this session of the European Choral Association Europa Cantat. I hope that we are online now and live and you can follow us for this little session where you can meet some team members of the European Choral Association Europa Cantat today on Fête de la Musique, and you will hear some creative ideas of what choirs and ensembles have done during the COVID-19 crisis and are doing. And we also want to share some other things with you. We first want to present ourselves a little bit. So hello and welcome again. You are listening to Sonja Greiner, Secretary General of the European Choral Association Europa Cantat, and with me is my colleague Estera Mihaila. She's our communication manager. So let's start a little bit with an introduction of the European Choral Association Europa Cantat, just in case you have never heard about that or you don't know what we're doing. And if you want to hear more, you can visit our virtual booth later and you will find much more information there. The European Choral Association Europa Cantat is a network for collective singing in Europe, and we are members of the International and European Music Council and of IFCM, three other organizations that you may have seen during this festival and that have also booths at the expo, and we are partners of Jeunesse Musicale International for the World Youth Choir. We are a network of around 60 national and regional choral associations in 30 European countries plus Israel. We also have several hundred member choirs and member individuals. Through our network, we represent about 2.5 million people in Europe. And you will have noticed that even though we're called European Choral Association, we use the word collective singing, and we have started doing that because we feel that collective singing is more inclusive. It includes singing in the classroom, vocal ensembles, vocal jazz, vocal pop, and other forms of singing where several people in a group join consciously to sing together. Now, some years ago, we wanted to find out how many people practice collective singing in Europe, or how many people sing in choirs and ensembles in Europe, because we wanted to know what was our potential market out there and how many people are concerned by what we do. And we were quite surprised by the results because we had started with an estimate of 20 million singers, and the study showed a much higher figure. In continental Europe alone, there are 37 million singers, and this represents around 4.5% of the population. In most countries in Europe, there are actually more people doing active singing than playing football or soccer actively. And since Jeunesse Musicale International is a global organization, if we had to think about the figures for the whole world, which we don't have at the moment, it would be many more. And this figure is important for us because all these people are affected by COVID-19 in a way that I will explain in a moment later. So one more figure, if we think only of the European Union, there are 22.5 million singers in the European Union alone. These figures are so big, so maybe just one to help you visualize that figure. So these 22.5 million represent the population of those 5 cities together. That would be an impressive European choir if they all sang together. I will now hand over to my colleague Estera, who will tell you a little bit more about what are the activities we regularly offer. So, dear Estera, what are we offering to those 37 million people and more?
Thank you, Sonja. So, as you can see, a lot of singers, and what we work towards is to give them all the chance to sing together. And for that, we organize a wide range of activities. So, as to say a little bit for everybody, we're really happy to be welcoming thousands of participants at our events each year, be it festivals, special choirs, academies, masterclasses, or training sessions. Our events have an educational aim and are open to European and non-European participants as well. And with some exceptions, they're basically welcoming participants of all ages. To find those endorsed events, we publish each year our annual program with events and activities that are international and non-competitive. Our purpose is and will be to offer our participants the chance to constantly learn and improve themselves, besides sharing and exchanging good practices and why not challenges and how they can navigate them together. Our main event is the Europa Cantat Festival, taking place every 3 years in a new European city, in a new European country. We are already looking forward to next year's edition, happening in Ljubljana in Slovenia, for those of you looking for some singing adventure in July next year. During the festival, we're going to offer a wide program, but as well special programs for conductors and composers, known as the Pulse program. But we're also offering a special training program for young managers called YEM, which offers the youth the chance to be involved in the running of the festival and have an important contribution to its development. And of course, we don't forget the children. They also have special ateliers at our festivals and also opportunities to attend singing weeks or dedicated events and activities such as Europa Cantat Junior Festival, or even audition for special youth choirs. So if there are conductors and educators out there, please take note of these events and send your singers to those activities. Yet, if you feel like you're working with some talented singers or ones that are just looking for more, we also have some special choirs, and we're only going to be sharing one of them with you today, which is the World Youth Choir, in case you missed them in their dedicated panel earlier today. We are one of the 3 patrons, together with Jeunesse Musicale International, gathering in the World Youth Choir Foundation. And we're running each year this special project with up to 90 singers from all over the world rehearsing and performing together. And last and not least, we have masterclasses and training sessions for conductors, for them to get new training, discover new repertoire, meet each other, and get even better at inspiring the groups they're working with. And yeah, all of this to celebrate being and singing together and having through song and music a unified Europe and a unified world, regardless of our background. Basically sharing the message of the fact that there's no better way than being together. So Sonia, maybe you can tell us more about the project with a similar purpose, which is Sing Me In.
Yes, thank you very much. So apart from these activities that Estera has been mentioning, since the 1990s, we have also been coordinating and participating in different European Union funded projects, many multi-annual cooperation projects. So sometimes we are coordinating them. Now we are coordinating the project EPIC, which is about auditioned youth music ensembles. So the World Youth Choir also has something to do with that. And we are partners in other projects, for example, at the moment in the SHIFT project, which is coordinated by the European Music Council and which is about the UN Sustainable Development Goals and what we can do as cultural organizations. I would now like to just present shortly one project which we chose because yesterday was World Refugee Day and we thought that this was a fitting project. This project is already over, but the project results are still there and very useful we think. So from 2016 to 2018, we coordinated the project called Sing Me In, and it was co-funded by the EU Erasmus Plus program. Together with 11 partners from 9 countries, we collected sample projects and we developed handbooks for everybody who wants to use collective singing to support the inclusion of young migrants, and actually the same can be used for not so young migrants as well in future. So you can see here the 4 handbooks that can be downloaded from our project website. And the handbooks are about 3 different contexts in which you may be working with young migrants. So the first one is about refugees and working with them in the surroundings where they are, so in their accommodations, in their environment. Then we have one handbook about working in a school environment where usually you have a multicultural setting anyway, and you have migrant children automatically there. And then there is one for choirs or for people who work with choirs that would like to increase the number of young migrants or migrants in their choirs, and with some tips and tricks on how this can be done. These 3 handbooks have been translated into 11 different languages. So I think there should be a language that you understand that you can choose from. And in addition, there is a repertoire guide, which is only in English, which gives you some ideas of which repertoire you can choose if you want to work with young migrants in different situations. We included icebreakers that you can also watch as videos. They were produced at a workshop we did in the project. And there is a connection to the Musique database, which is a very useful tool for conductors to choose repertoire. And if you type in "Sing Me In" as a keyword, you will find repertoire that is relevant for this project. By the way, we've also shared those handbooks at our virtual booth, so feel free to go there. And if during the presentation now you have any questions, please use the chat or the question and answer function here in the stage, and we can try to answer them immediately. And otherwise, you can contact us at our booth a bit later. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about today was what is happening with choirs and collective singing during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we have already had some sessions today that dealt with the economic impact of the pandemic, but of course there is more than that. So at the beginning of the crisis, mid-March, almost all the choirs and ensembles in Europe and also beyond had to stop rehearsals, often from 1 minute to the next, without any pre-announcement. It was a shock to most choirs and ensembles, and many took a break in March. But bit by bit, a lot of choirs and groups started with virtual rehearsals using Zoom, Jitsi, or other similar programs. And many also produced virtual choirs. There on the screen, you will see an example done by singers of the last 3 World Youth Choir sessions. But there are, I think by now, probably thousands of virtual choirs around on the internet. Now, both formats, those virtual rehearsals and the virtual choirs, do not really allow collective singing, even though they look like it. But they are virtually, both of them, individual singing, and only the virtual choir looks like collective singing to the audience later. But what the singers were missing was truly singing together and hearing each other. Some groups tried such formats. They tried to test possibilities of really singing together. And one of them is, for example, Jamulus, or another is Jamkazam. These are programs that allow jamming sessions online real time. However, they are only working with very small groups of musicians, and usually you need very high technical skills to make them work. Nevertheless, I know of at least 1 or 2 choirs who managed with 20 singers to do something with that, though they were still fighting latency issues. And then there were some other really creative ideas, like in Germany, a few choirs started car rehearsals on parkings of big department stores or shops that were closed due to the lockdown, and they used FM transmitters, which is actually quite a cheap method, and people could actually hear each other, see each other from their cars, and sing together, which, as the people who did it described, was a real great experience for them. Now, we can say that in the last weeks, bit by bit, choral life has resumed in a way. And in most countries, it was first the professional choirs and professional ensembles who started working again, because, of course, for them, it was also an issue about earning some money. Most of the first performances were without audience or without live audience, so they were streamed, but at least they were able to sing together. As you can see, they used different methods to make sure that the singing would be safe as it could be. So, for example, the French choir, they used plexiglass partitions. Some only sang at a quite large distance from each other. Others sang with face masks. And as you can see on the pictures, all of them were lucky enough to be able to use big halls or churches for their performances. And of course, not every amateur choir is able to use such a big hall if they want to start again. Nevertheless, bit by bit, also other groups and choirs started singing again in May and June. There were big differences between countries on what they were allowed or able to do. And in some countries like Germany and Belgium, even big differences within the country. So in Germany, there are regions where singing is still not possible. And also in Belgium, there were differences between the different regions. Sometimes singing is only allowed outside, sometimes with a maximum of 10 people. Sometimes singers have to wear masks, and many people say, can you sing with masks? Well, I can say from my own experience, because I'm an amateur singer, and I sang in a garden with friends. And yes, especially when you use those surgical masks, it's very possible to sing for 1 hour or 1.5 hours, and you get enough air through it. So it's not impossible. Also, the distance rules in the different countries, in the protocols, hygiene protocols that have been developed by choirs or choral organizations are very different. In some countries, you just need to be 1 meter or 1.5 meters apart from each other. In others, 2 meters. In my own region, for example, you have to sing 3 meters apart. And you have to, now I think they reduced it to 2 meters now, but you have to have 3 meters between rows so that the singers who are in front of you don't get hit by the air that you produce. Some countries also give a minimum amount of square meters that you have to have per singer. So that's now 7 square meters in our region, for example. And also there are recommendations that rehearsal should be shorter, and you should have longer breaks in between. And of course, everybody recommends if you're singing inside, you should have sufficient ventilation. All these rules mean, yes, collective singing is possible, but if you look at the pictures and if you hear what I said, it's not the collective singing as we were used to it. So we cannot go back to new normal rehearsals as we had them before the pandemic. We cannot put 60 people in a room for 1.5 hours without good ventilation and without enough space, which means that we are returning to what we call in Germany a new normality. Unfortunately, there are still some countries and regions where even this new normality is not there yet. And singing is still totally forbidden, even in church services, but also in choirs or vocal ensembles. And some countries have decided to only allow it for professionals, but not for amateurs. So why is this? Why is singing forbidden while most other activities are now allowed again? You can even do indoor sports with more than 10 people. And the reason is that in March, before lockdown, there were some incidents with choirs, with large choirs, some of them with a pretty high average age, where in one rehearsal or 2 rehearsals, a lot of the choir singers of one choir got infected. So there was a very high percentage of infections, and there was the fear that singing might have caused these high numbers of infections. However, nobody knows if they got infected really because they were singing or if it was just because they hugged each other before a rehearsal, they shared food, or, and that's probably the most valid theory at the moment, if they got infected mainly because there were too many people in a small room without sufficient air. So the media have been saying a lot that choir singing is dangerous, choir singing can kill, but we would like to stress that it's not the singing that is dangerous. Singing and collective singing is actually good for you, it's good for the immune system, it's good for the health, and most of all, it's very good for the well-being. This was very important during the pandemic. What is dangerous is therefore not the singing, it's the COVID-19 virus, and we should try to stress that. Now, what we need now to give singing a better image again is more research. And there are many organizations and institutions that are working on that now. There have already been a number of studies done quite quickly by orchestras and choirs on how far the droplets fly when you play a wind instrument or when you sing. And actually the result was that singers don't spread the droplets any further than people who speak. It's also because non-musicians often think that when you sing, you actually throw out a lot of air at the same time. But if you are a singer, you know that your aim is actually to control your breathing and to keep your air as long as possible. And you probably emit more air quickly when you laugh or when you scream than when you're singing. So there is evidence for that, but the science thinks that it may not be the droplets, but it may be the so-called aerosols, the very, very small droplets that carry the virus more than the droplets. And there we don't really have sufficient studies or research yet, both on the question whether the aerosols are really the main carriers of the virus and the main reason for infections, but also not about the question whether singers emit more aerosols than people who speak and are just sitting together, or people who are making sports indoors, for example, who also breathe in and out probably more than when you're just having a chat. So we are desperately waiting for the results of this research and trying to support them. And in Catalonia, there's also research on singing with face masks and shields. So they're trying out all those different systems. But it's important to remind people that if you're wearing only a shield, this is not really a protection against aerosols because they can actually get out at the bottom, but it's a protection with droplets if you are in front of somebody. And the last slide in this context that I wanted to present, because we also want to keep a little bit of time for questions and answers at the end. So please do use the Q&A section or the chat if you want to know something more. Is that while we said that choirs are starting to rehearse again a little bit, I also said that it's not really as it was before, normality. And many singers also don't want to take a risk yet, maybe because they are older singers or because they belong to the risk group for other health reasons. Some are simply nervous, and even in the places where the pandemic seems to be quite under control now, many singers hesitate to go back. So we believe that we will need some virtual or digital tools also for longer. The second reason is that we don't know if there will be a second wave and we may be forced to stop singing again. So we have been observing the market of all those digital tools. And in Germany, a group won a hackathon of the German government and is now working on what they call a digital stage that should allow real-time collective rehearsing or performing for musicians, but also for actors. So it's a platform for the performing arts in general. This may also be interesting for the JMI members and people. They're still in the development and fundraising phase, but they're quite near now to launching a first version of the platform. And what we liked about this platform compared to Jamulus and Jamkazam and some other programs that we had tried is that they will have 3 options. And the first one will be a browser-based, very simple option that is easy to handle. And that's the one that we will need for the amateur choir sector. But there will also be a desktop app that is now working with a German program called Soundjack, but they are improving the way it can be used. And they're combining it with video possibility, which did not exist in those other programs until now. So it would be the first program that allows real-time music making with real-time video as well. And for the ones who want to have the best success, the best quality, they will have to buy a box where the latency will be extremely low, and it should work very well, especially when you are from the same town or the same region, actually, and you can use a server that is locally, which is one of the things they're doing to reduce latency. The first 2 options will be free for members of performing arts organizations and institutions. That's important to know. And the box, because you get a piece of hardware, obviously you will have to pay something for it. So follow them if you are interested in how this tool is developing, if you want to know what will be the future of it. We will share on our channels, on our communication channels, when the first official versions are out. Because we are supporting this platform, we are partners, because we believe that at the moment this is the most promising tool in this area that we have found in out there, even though you never know, there may be others that we are not aware of, but we tried to do our best to research the market there. So this is a little bit an image of what choirs and ensembles are doing in COVID-19 times, what are the perspectives, what we think we have to fight for. Maybe one more word on the economical situation that was mentioned before. Of course, even if the amateur choir singers are not earning money, we also have a lot of professionals in the choral world. We have a lot of conductors. Often they are not employed, they're self-employed, and the self-employed people are, of course, suffering a lot at the moment during the crisis, even in countries like Germany, which might look as if they have wonderful programs in place. They often don't work for single self-employed people. And of course, there are also professional vocal ensembles and professional choirs. And in Germany, we have quite a lot of them. And for some of them, the situation is also extremely difficult at the moment. Also because when you are allowed to perform, there are still quite strong restrictions on the audience you can have. So you can't really earn much money with audience, even if they can come and listen to you. And with this, I will pass the word back to Estera, who will tell you a little bit more about our communication tools and how you can stay in touch with us.
Thank you. So besides of everything you've heard from us today, believe me when I tell you, there's still some more to discover. So please connect with us on our channels. And of course, if you want to get monthly news about the choral world, subscribe to our newsletter, which is going to be shown in a second. You can find it on our website and also in our booth. Also, more on the topic today, you will find on our website under the link that I'm going to be putting for you in the chat right now. So europeanchrolassociation.org/COVID-19, you'll find there the survey that we've done measuring the impact of the virus on the choral sector, and of course, a lot of useful resources gathered on a daily basis from our members and partners. And last but not least, don't forget that sharing is caring. So these resources and everything you've heard that is useful in the presentation today, please share them with your peers, and we're looking forward to welcoming you in our booth, and keep in touch.
Thank you very much, Estera. We have, I think, 5 minutes or 4 or 5 minutes. If among the people who are listening to us out there, if somebody has a question, please do come up with it now. Otherwise, I would also like to say, if any Europeans are listening and you have examples that you can't find in the document we shared. So on the website that Estera shared, there is a link to the document where we have collected everything we know about research, all the tools we are aware of, and also the situation we are aware of. But with the number of countries in Europe, obviously it can always happen that we don't have information from a specific country. Or if you have a really cool picture you would like to share with us, please feel free to contact us or to put a comment directly in the document, which is a Google Doc, so you can actually make additions and comments. I cannot see any questions at the moment. So, Estera, anything else you would like to mention or share? I think we can be at also, because if you go to the booth, you can also click on our name and you can chat with us. So I think we can stay online for a bit. If you didn't want to ask a question in front of everybody, please feel free to just come to our booth. And also, if you liked this presentation, feel free to share it later, because as far as I understood, Gemma is actually sharing all those recordings, all those recorded sessions on Facebook, so they will be available also for people who couldn't make it to the festival. And then just to say thank you very much to Jeunesse Musicale International for inviting us. This was a great opportunity to connect. We feel that COVID-19 times are also strengthening the links between organizations and between people, and I think this opportunity was one of the possibilities to do so. So let's look forward and hope that there will be lots of new creativity and lots of new connections ahead of us. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the program, the rest of the day.
Thank you.